Better in than out.
Out.
Jim Allister?
Most emphatically, we'd be better off out. The EU is a huge drain on our national resources. As a nation, we pay in £17 billion every year into Brussels. We get back less than half. That is 23.6 million of a loss per day. £1 million every hour.
But
That's
what about all the
membership
benefits? We've heard Martina Anderson listing the benefits of the funding.
I just explained. We get back less than half of what we pay in. And what do we get in return? We get an EU that tells us what our immigration policy is, what our socio-economic policies are, that controls every facet of our lives, and we get the privilege of paying over the top into other countries' economies to benefit them. Even Northern Ireland, which has done better than most parts of the United Kingdom out of the EU, is still a net contributor. So as a nation, most certainly
you think out,
better off
quite clearly out.
There's a headlong rush left and right of me to withdraw from the European Union.
We have an extra 17 billion that we're pouring into the black hole called Brussels every year to spend on our own farmers, our own fishermen,
all right, Jim,
our own businesses.
That's a point written. Martina, just answer that.
That's the guarantee. We should be able to guarantee that money would come before we actually make the decision to get out.
Jim,
let me just bring
the EU
Belfast
is irreformable,
well.
and the parties like the DUP
let me just bring the Sinn Féin candidate back in on this.
They know perfectly well it's irreformable.
Or exports going forward.
Jim Allister, you are the one who talks about the vast amounts of money that you say are pouring into a black hole. There are some people who'll say, how much money are we putting into farming? What are we getting out of it?
Well, remember, what we get from Brussels is some of our own money back, and it's not £2.5 billion every year. It's £2.5 billion over a 7-year period, and that's already an exaggerated figure. It's approximately 250 million a year.
Should Europe continue to prop up unviable businesses?
Well, remember what the fundamental theory of the Common Agricultural Policy is. It is to provide cheap, safe food, and therefore to sustain production and to help the productive sector to produce that safe and sustainable food. Now, that is why the Common Agricultural Policy exists, and without it, our food undoubtedly would be even more expensive. But the real issue now in Northern Ireland is not what Brussels is doing with the Common Agricultural Policy, but what Stormont is going to do with the implementation. Because we're at a point where there has to be an agreement on how it is to be shared out. Sinn Féin are wanting to rob the productive sector of their... Sorry, I must finish.
No, let's go back. We're going to go back
and spread it to the unproductive sector.
We're going to go back to the issue at the heart.
If that isn't achieved,
we're not talking about what Stormont's doing with it. We're talking about what Europe has done with it. We're going to leave it there for a minute. Jim Nicholson, I need to bring you. Jim Allister, it's not just bureaucracy. It's the gravy train, the corruption. That makes people very cynical about Europe.
Of course, and the Commission themselves have in fact admitted that the cost of their bureaucracy on business is €600 million per annum. Now, I've heard them talking for years about cutting it. They're not cutting it. They're adding to it because there's a self-perpetuating industry of bureaucracy in the European Commission. And, you know, there's a very simple answer. Get out of Europe. And we shred and shed the bureaucracy. Take a successful country like Switzerland, which has got one of the highest GDPs outside of Europe.
We've been stuck in the past, and there needs to be more money in that.
Jim Allister, should that be the priority for this smaller tranche of peace funding?
No, I think the priority should be economic legacy, to leave something lasting rather than the froth which disappears that we've had out of so much of peace funding. Remember, it's not EU largesse, it's getting back some of our own money, and I trust this time there will be none of the folly of the Sinn Féin DUP proposal to waste 20 million on the Maize Shrine until the DUP was forced into a U-turn by innocent victims.